I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First item on our agenda is for our weekly commission reports. Commissioner Pennell.
Thank you. I will be attending a Chamber of Commerce event on Thursday evening, and then all day Friday we have a commission budget retreat. That's my week.
All right. Commissioner Olson.
Tomorrow I go to the Mason County Transit Board, and Friday the retreat.
And this week, Wednesday, I will be attending a criminal justice board meeting. It's on Wednesday. On Thursday this week, I'll be attending a MACECOM board meeting. I may go to the Thursday night Chamber of Commerce event. And Friday, I will be present at our retreat. And that is my commission report. Next we have is a 3-minute general public comment period. But if you have something to say about a specific item, you may want to wait until that item, or you can speak now, I guess. So would anybody like to use their 3 minutes now during the general comment period, or would you like to wait for a specific item?
We have 2 people signed up for it.
Yes. Okay, then we'll wait until that time. Thank you very much. I have my fellow commissioners had time to review the consent agenda. Okay, could we please have the reading of the consent agenda?
Consent agenda, vouchers numbered 79462 through 79571 in the amount of $677,688.28. Payroll warrant numbered 67841 through 68026 in the amount of $576,053.12. Commission meeting minutes from business meeting of October 1st, 2012. Resolution number 1044-1012, a resolution of the City of Shelton, Washington, declaring city vehicles surplus to the needs of the city and disposing of such vehicles for the common benefit. Police purchase of 2 vehicles. Authorize the city administrator to make necessary budget modifications. Tourism Fund grant applications totaling $40,950 from Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce, Visitor Center, $15,500. Christmastown Kiwanis, Bluegrass from the Forest, $7,000. Mason County Forest Festival, $5,000. Mason County Historical Society Car Show, $850. Mason County Historical Society Museum Visitor Center, $8,500. Support Our County Kids, SOC, Old Time Fiddlers Fest, $3,700. And Support Our County Kids, SOC, Rhapsody Ride, $400, and enter into the 2013 preliminary budget. Carrillo Contract Amendment Number 4, authorize the mayor to sign and city administrator to make necessary budget modifications.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
I move we adopt the consent agenda as read.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No? The ayes have it. I made a technical error a few minutes ago, and I missed a report. Commissioner Pennell gently showed me my mistake, as she always does, and I need to go back to item number C, which is a commission report that our city administrator, Dave O'Leary, is going to give us at this time.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. This is a report on some work that we did earlier this year. We have the results from that work. Essentially, it is a report on our performance through the year 2011. I think we're going to put up the PowerPoint slides. I should say that you should be able to see the slides and generally know what's going on. We're going to walk through them, and you should be able to see those. But in case you want to get the details, the full report is on our website. The commissioners have it. We're going to be going through page at a time in case you want to see the details as we walk through here. But in case you want to look at it on TV or you want to look at it because you're viewing this video from our website, you can you'll be able to get those off there. Today it's on the commission agenda, with the commission agenda packet that's right on the front page of our website. And in the future, you just go to the appropriate commission meeting for October 15th, and you'll be able to find that there. Over my career, numerous times elected officials and others have asked us how well we operate compared to other cities. We've had that experience here in Shelton where people have said, well, this city's doing better than you are. Or on occasion, maybe you'll even see somebody will come in and say, I think you're doing better than another city. One of the ways that you can address this and other issues is through comparative performance measurement, where you actually measure how well you're doing in your city and you compare that with what other cities have done. There is a program, a national program, that takes this into account. And there's a fairly comprehensive survey of a lot of different cities that do those comparisons. In 2010, the organization that does that actually created a new program, which is Performance Measurement 101. And it allows you to get into this on a trial basis or maybe on a permanent basis to compare a lesser set of measurements against that. So early this year, I asked and the commission agreed to participate in the program, and all the participating cities, including us, generated data. As far as usefulness, the best way to get consistent comparisons with other cities is through doing this, and I know of no other program that does this. It also allows us, but beyond the comparisons, it allows us to set relevant performance goals. So what my job is all about is trying to get better performance out of the organization and out of the people in the organization. And when we do something good, it allows us to tell the story, say that we've done well here, and we can show it to you because we have data that backs it up. So we're going to walk through those. Not everything that's in there, but a good deal of it. Some of the measures are efficiency measures. Some of them are really just show our workload or total activity. And all of them, I think, add value to our understanding of our city compared to others. But I should say that cities are unique, and we got to judge that with our results in mind, because Shelton is a different place than everywhere else. So maybe we want it that way because we want it that way, for instance, even though it might cause us to think about doing something a different way. We're smaller than most of the cities that have participated in this. This is a new process. We actually made some errors, and we'll point those out as we go. And probably others made a few too, but I think generally most of the information that we gave is right, and I suspect that most of what other people did is right. So it's not a perfect system, but it is the best we have. And I'd also, before we get into it, I'd also like to say thanks to the employees who participated and filled out the data. Here's the participating cities. This is 3 or 4 pages in from the front of the book. And we'll have let's see, there are 66 participating cities, all of them from the United States. There are a few Washington cities and one from Oregon that are highlighted on the sheet there. There are other cities in Washington that participated, but they're in the bigger program rather than one that we're in. Let's see. Let's go on to the next one then. There are actually 14 different programs that you can put data in on, but only 11 of them were relevant for Shelton. The others, for instance, other cities have a fire department, and we don't have one. So there was no data to submit on that. Also, the other ones were library and EMS and procurement. We also did not participate in all the questions because they were either not relevant for us or because it would have cost more money. For instance, there's survey data in here, so you ask people how what their preferences are, or what their impression is of our various services, and we didn't participate in those right there. So the first program to have measurements on is code enforcement. This is on page 1, and I should say that there's a significant variation in the commitment that cities have to code enforcement. And we could do better if we had more staff and more commitment, legal and otherwise, to the effort. But I think regardless, we do pretty well. And there's one slide we didn't participate in, which is the expenditures per capita, because we didn't differentiate what our code enforcement officer does compared to other things. The first slide is on page 5, and the arrows you can see there point to our relative performance. The first slide is how much demand is there for code enforcement staff. This is a number of cases per 1,000 population. And so we have a fair amount. It's certainly not as much as some of the cities, but we have more than average, I would say. The other measure is what portion of our cases are we resolving, and we actually resolve a fairly high proportion of them. So for what we do pretty well. Another measure is how we're doing relative to the rest of the country as it relates to abandoned and vacant properties. Now there's a lot of that across the country right now because of the foreclosure issue. So I wanted to include this slide so you could see that we're actually doing pretty well. I think we're doing better than I would have expected as it relates to the number of abandoned and vacant properties per square mile in the city. The next program is facilities management. This is one of the places where we filled in the form wrong, and so we're learning how to do this. But what we've done is taken the real data when we discovered the error, and we're showing you where we would have scored had we done the information right. The shaded area is where it says Shelton on the form, and the red is where we would have been. And then these have to do with custodial expenses per square foot for administrative and office space, and the other one is for all facilities. These are paid on pages 18 and 19. And as you can see, we're kind of in the middle there. But we're certainly not toward the high end. The next program is fleet maintenance. I should say that on this program and others, there are policies that can influence costs that we don't necessarily have control over. For instance, weather can have an adverse impact on your ability to maintain vehicles, and we have some fairly significant weather here. This first slide this is 2 slides on pages 43 and 44. It shows the annual cost per vehicle and heavy equipment, including police vehicles. Now, this is without factoring in mileage. It's just the per vehicle cost for all your vehicles. And we're a little on the high side with that, so that's probably something that we should look at over time. And the next slide has to do completely with police vehicle maintenance, and we do very well with that. I think one of the things that we do is we have drive-home cars. And what our police chief at the time told us when we made the decision to do that is that our maintenance costs would go down. So our cars are fairly old, but we still have pretty low maintenance costs because a take-home car, the police tend to take better care of them. So that's a benefit. Street maintenance, again, there's conditions affecting our road condition. Weather, traffic volume, pavement age. Weather and pavement age are giving us real challenges. And there's no surprises here. We don't spend enough on street maintenance. One of the measures that you can use that we've worked at in the past was to actually evaluate the pavement condition. We did that several years ago. We haven't updated. Since we haven't updated it recently, we haven't included that. But if we did, it'd show that our roads are in poor condition. And the slides kind of bear that out. And the first measure is how much we spend per paved mile compared to others. And you can see we don't spend very much at all. There's the other, practically everybody in the program is spending more on street maintenance than we do that are measuring this. And the other one, actually, we're doing pretty well, is how many days it takes us to fill a pothole. And we're on the, that's pretty good considering that we've cut 2 staff out of that program in the past several years. Next program is human resources. That's on page 58, and the slides are on pages 62 for the first one. this is just how many people you have compared to all the people that you have employed. This is saying that we have about 1 per 100, and that's about where we are. That's kind of an industry standard, and so we're not spending any more than we should. Probably, if we tried to do any less than that, we might be getting in trouble. The next slide on page 63 talks about external recruitments per full-time employee. I'm a little bit, I don't think I like this measurement very much because it kind of assumes that that's all that HR department does is recruitments. But we actually do a lot of other things, such as labor negotiations, which is very time-consuming. We also do tend to spend more time on recruitments than others might because our HR professional sits in on all employee applications. And that's to ensure that we do the hiring processes right. The next two measurements, how much we spend on a recruitment on page 64, and then we spend a fair amount, but not extreme. If you look at the amounts that are there on the bottom, a few other cities spend a lot of money, and we don't do that. And the next one is how long it takes to do a recruitment, and we're really on the low end of that. So we get our positions filled pretty quickly compared to other cities. I think that one of the advantages we've had is we haven't had to replace a department head. And that tends to get strung out, and that would probably push our numbers more toward the middle if we had to factor in 1 or 2 department heads, and fortunately we haven't had that until recently. Information technology is on page 69, and those we've tried, and the data includes costs for both in-house and outside contracted services. We've tried it both ways. We find the cost to be comparable, and so I think the data is good for a comparison to that. The first slide on page 73 is expenses per jurisdiction inside the full-time per jurisdiction personnel that's working on IT, and we have a fairly efficient result. We don't spend a lot per employee compared to others for IT support services. And the other one on page 74 is the number of help desk calls we get per information technology, ITE, and FTE, or that's full-time employee. And we're kind of deliberately organized to have people resolve their own problems if we can. A lot of IT calls are to go out and plug something in. Well, our folks actually have somebody. When we started years ago, we actually had somebody in each department that would go resolve that issue, and we don't have to depend on, we don't have to hire somebody extra in IT to resolve the issues that people problems that people can provide for themselves, solve for themselves. The next program is Parks and Rec, and there's this is a kind of a peculiar program. We actually have a Metropolitan Parks District, but the city contracts with the Metropolitan Parks District for services. But it's a valid measure for the city because we're actually doing the work even though it's done for the Metropolitan Parks District. The first measure is the number of employees that we have per 1,000 population. This one actually includes Mark and the crews that do the work and also the part-time positions, and so we actually have a fairly low number of people that do that work for us. So I think that's a pretty efficient measure. The other one is on page 95 and 96 are the expenses and revenues per acre. And it's a little bit funny because you don't really know what other people's park system, how it lays out, how much trail they have versus grass and that sort of thing. So you got to kind of take that into account. Ours look a little bit high, but it may not be if we go in and we look at some data. I have one more chart that doesn't look very good for us. This is a percentage of lesson and camp programs that are filled to capacity. We don't tend to fill up our programs in Shelton. Looks like the other cities in the group here tend to have their recreation programs fill up. So we have low participation rates, but we have real good popular support for the program because people actually voted recently to pay additional taxes in order to keep it. So I think the smart thing is to keep doing what we're doing regardless. And one thing that I should say is that we do a pretty good job. If we don't get at least a threshold support for a program, we drop it, and then we go off and we try something else where we can get more support. Permit services is the next one. And we've had some recent cuts in this program. It's on page 102 where it starts, and then the slides are on pages 106 and 107 for the first set of slides. This isn't a measure of staff performance as much as just how much are we doing in the way of permit volume, and it's the number of permits issued per thousand population. And it's really our business activity compared to other jurisdictions, normalized by population. And we're still doing quite a bit of building permit activity, is what it looks like to me. The next measure on page 108 and 109 is the permits issued is how many permits we issue, and per full-time employee in the city. And we do a fair amount there too. Again, how much are we spending on each permit that we issue? That's a little bit high. And I don't know what to make of that. Maybe it's something we want to look at. The next one is police services. And I should say that when we get into this, I'm going to repeat that some of the performance measures that we have here are things that are outside the control, or maybe substantially outside the control of the staff that's working on this. Nevertheless, we want to look at the data to see if there's something that we can do about it. We did not include one of the measures, which was response time, and that's because we don't have the data, so we weren't able to put that in. Let's look at the first slide on pages 117 and 118. This is and how much are we paying for police service? Well, we're not paying as high as people pay, but we're paying quite a bit. And I think as we work our way through the slides, you'll see why. Let's look at the next one on pages 119 and 120. This is the percentage of uniform crime reporting crimes that are cleared, and otherwise there's a resolution to the crime. And that's fairly high, and that's considering our workload. One of the things that didn't make it into this 101 data that made it into other CPM data is just pure crime rate as it compared to others. And frankly, we're off the chart. We got as high a crime rate in total, not violent crime necessarily, but violent and property crime as anybody. And I think we managed to knock that down recently related to property crime. We're probably down to the high end. Nevertheless, our police are very busy, and that's shown to that. And here's a police workload, and these are another measure of workload, and this is crimes cleared per sworn full-time employee. And you can see there let's see your chart. Let's go to this one. Pages 121 and 122. Yeah, the blue that you see there is violent crime, and the white that you see there is property crime. So you can see that now these are the problems. These are the crimes that have been cleared. In other words, resolved in some fashion. So but even in that, we're at the top end of the spectrum. I believe that's per thousand. Is that per thousand population? Oh, per sworn FTE, I'm sorry. Yes, per sworn police officer. We got some other statistics, which is on page 123. The first chart on the left, which is a composite chart. The one on the right is on page 125. But these include driving while under the driving while under the influence arrests, and injury-producing car crashes. DUIs are actually on the low side for us. The arrow points to the DUI statistic, and this is per thousand population. Injury accidents are about average across that. The other slide that we have is a measure on and this was on page 125, This is the sustained complaints per 100 police officers. We only have 18 sworn, so it only takes one to get our numbers up pretty high. So this is one that you shouldn't take too much stock in it except for over a period of time, because we're going to show high because all it takes is one. And actually, if you're showing some, it's not altogether bad because it means that you're managing your police officer conduct. So the next program on page 138 is risk management. Here is the charts are on page 142 and 143. This is a total. The first one is a total valuation for all property that we have at risk. You know, we're only, in terms of our population, we wouldn't be showing nearly as far down on that chart as what it is. I mean, again, we're one of the smaller cities in the whole group. But I think the reason that we have so much more is because we're a full-service city. Many cities don't provide utility services, for instance, and we do, and so you factor in all the value that we have for utilities. Page 143 is back to law enforcement. The number of law enforcement vehicles that have been in accidents, and that one is, and we're kind of high there. I'd like to see less than that, but again, you're measuring it over 1 year. We have a fairly small group. So the next chart's on risk management. This is shows the number of workman's compensation claims filed per 100 FTEs. That's the one on the left on page 144. That's actually low compared to other cities, lower than I might have expected, but what it means is our people are working safely. The other one is on page 145, what we spend on risk management, and that's kind of high. Well, maybe that we got the payoff in that is that we have fewer people injured at work. The last program is solid waste, and this is on page 149 to introduction. The first chart is on pages 153 and 154, the first two charts. Those are the ones that you can see the gray areas there. Excuse me, it is all one chart. The gray spot is off on the left, and that's what we showed as an error. And what had happened is our employees filled out the chart and showed all garbage instead of just residential. And residential is all that everybody else was measuring. So in other words, it talks about just how much garbage we have in Shelton, and it looked like we had a lot more than everybody else, but we don't. We have a little less than average in terms of how much garbage we're producing. The next page, again, on page 155, these are operation and maintenance expenses per ton of garbage collected. And those are a little high, but I think those are going to drop because we just made some program changes by assuming recycling and not paying a contract, and that should bring our costs down pretty well in 2012 and years hence. And on page 156, it shows the percentage of recycling as a percentage of garbage. And I thought, and when I first saw that number, I thought that has to be wrong because we do alternate week recycling and garbage, which really influences people to recycle. And when you put the actual number in, which is the one on top, we have a very high percentage compared to other cities of people that participate in the recycle program. In summary, we're mostly doing very well. We've got a few areas to look into. There's a couple errors that we made, but the idea is to use the information to get better. And so I have questions.
I remember the day that you talked to me about this program, and again, I was fairly new in office, and is it going to help or not help? I think you were very honest in your approach and said, I think this is a valuable tool for us, and the costs seem to be within a reasonable amount of money. I think it was an excellent choice, and I think this is extremely valuable for us to take a look at, and I'm glad we're not Tumwater, Washington. Just based upon what the graphs were showing. Not that they're a bad city or anything, but, we're all doing the best we can in each one of these. areas. And so I'm just saying, I think it's great. I'm looking forward to taking this and going and looking at it and studying a little bit. And I think it's a valuable tool for the city.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
A lot of stress in doing this for employees, so I appreciate the work that they've done.
Yeah, we do. All right. Thank you very much for that report. Now we're back on target with our agenda malfunction that I accidentally fell into there. And so next item on our business will be under old business. We have, it looks like a briefing from our Economics Development, Mr. Steve Goins, and a second reading. So,
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. I'm going to pass out some draft ordinances to help you walk through this item. And I think I'll just speak from the podium. I have an exhibit that I want to show you as well. First one. They will look very similar. And the third choice.
You can explain the differences?
I will.
Okay.
I have a graphic on the easel here as well that might clarify this a little further, but as a means of background, we've proposed an ordinance that would exempt downtown businesses, downtown buildings, properties from the Transportation Impact Fee, the TIF. During the first reading, there was some discussion over the area which this would serve. And so it sounded like there were three options that were being considered by the Commission. The option that was drafted as the proposal by staff included the area that you see on the easel here, and if Terry could pull up the exhibit I have, I can show you that as well. This area that's within the red here is the downtown of Shelton, and that's defined as the downtown core actually in the ordinance that we have adopted. That's the area that currently has the 85% of the actual fee, a 15% reduction in fee, if you will, that's in place right now. What we discussed in our last meeting was whether that was the appropriate area to designate for the exemption or a different area. And in the overhead, I can show you what the different areas look like. If you could pull that. Okay, this will show the downtown zones. The first area that we considered was the area that's called the downtown commercial zone, or the DT zone.
Would that be item number one that you gave us? Is that the first one?
Option one is the area as is described in the ordinance as the downtown core, which is the red outlined area. Option two would be the area that's zoned downtown commercial, which in this graphic is the lighter green or yellowish area. It's kind of a dog leg, if you will, going to the left down toward Neelan Street there. You see that it's kind of a lighter green or yellow. That's zoned downtown commercial. The more light colored green would be describing a third option, which would be both the downtown core and the Commercial Valley Residential. That lighter green is the extent of the Commercial Valley Residential Zone District. So you have the boundary that's on the graphic here that you see as the downtown core or the downtown zone, or both the downtown and Commercial Valley Residential Zone districts. So each optional ordinance would give you whichever preference you may have. From a staff standpoint, I think our initial thought was to move forward the commercial core, in part because when we adopted the ordinance, there was some discussion over whether this was generating a fair and equitable way to evaluate traffic impact in the downtown core. And we landed upon this area as the area that would receive the reduction in fee. So it's already defined in the ordinance. But outside of that, I don't know if there's really a negative, if you will, over which preference you would prefer. Obviously, you get more bang for your buck, if you will, if you are choosing the largest area. That would be both zones, or you could opt to go with the downtown, which has some similarities to what is currently in the ordinance. It's narrower on the railroad side, but it extends down First Street a little bit, which isn't in the downtown core area that's defined in the ordinance. So those are the three options for consideration for second reading tonight.
Well, I guess I could start and say that this is not a permanent, if we put this can be taken back out if we experience an extreme amount of growth or something. I mean, this could be changed in the future. Is that true?
Yes, like we're doing tonight, we can amend the ordinance, and from time to time, we will revisit this in a larger context. We report annually, for example, on how much revenue is generated, what types of projects we anticipate taking on, those kinds of things.
And I think that the desire of the Chamber of Commerce, who brought that to this commission like a year and a half ago or so, maybe a little more than a year ago, was to encourage some business in Shelton and some, which would bring more tax revenue and whatnot. I would support the larger of the areas myself, but I imagine we all have three different opinions on this. So I would stand on, it's not a permanent fix. We could change this back if we saw some reason that it was all of a sudden lots of stuff was going on that we felt was being taken advantage of or something. So I would support the larger of the areas.
I actually agree with that. I'm still not positive that this is going to really accomplish a whole lot, because, but if the goal is to encourage business, then the larger the area, that presumably the more business you're going to attract. I would have to be convinced that is going to happen. I haven't seen it to this point. So I guess, as we've talked about all along, this is a step that we can take. It remains to be seen how successful it is.
I prefer the first one. I think it's better to stay off of, not include Alder Street, because you're getting more into residential areas that could be converted over to some commercial uses, and I think that would definitely have a negative impact on the residential traffic in that area more so. So my option is the first one.
So, just a clarification, this doesn't change the zoning, correct? It just changes collecting the traffic impact fee.
That's correct. The ordinance would, as it's crafted, exempt existing buildings which aren't expanding from the transportation impact fee. That is, if you're having a change of occupancy, as Mike just described, you would still not be subject to this fee. And it doesn't take into consideration what was in there before.
Right. But it doesn't change the underlying zoning.
That's correct.
Well, we do have a public comment period here at some point that we would address. I don't know if right now that would be, we seem to be not totally on the same page, so is this item something somebody wanted to speak to tonight? Okay, why don't you come up, Tracy, and speak your opinion on this matter?
Do I need to sign in? I'm signed in for another
Oh, another item. Oh, then, well, I don't think so. I think you
We
can,
just add this one?
yeah, we can,
Because
yeah.
I'm still going to come back.
I can give you 3 minutes on each item. You got the special treatment tonight.
Okay, well, I wasn't planning on speaking on this, but I am a member of the Saver Committee that this recommendation came from. And the goal is to actually promote business in the actual downtown area. And so I have to say that regardless, it does not really change the zoning, but I think to expand it to the larger area would maybe not exactly fulfill the purpose of the recommendation. This is just my opinion. I'm not speaking as a Saver Committee person, but because it was designed to promote business in the downtown area. So I also would prefer that business be promoted where the infrastructure is already there, where we have the vacant buildings, and I think it's kind of counterproductive to expand it out into the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think that I would like to make a motion, I guess, and move forward with this. It's staff's recommendation to have a second reading, but it appears we need some clarification what we're going to do. And unless one of us has changed our mind, we have option A or option 3 that we are still slightly undecided about. I would still probably support option A because doesn't change any zoning, and there may be some spaces in the larger areas that could be beneficial to this. We have basically a recession still going on, and I think that I would support the larger map. So, if we have another commissioner that still thinks the larger map is the option, then we would probably move forward with that.
I'm not so sure about that anymore.
That's why we have public comment periods.
Those are compelling arguments. I guess, again, the same argument applies. Whatever the size of the zone, I'm still not convinced it's going to change much. But I can agree with the argument that the goal is to improve business in the downtown. So that being said, then the boundary of the zone should be the downtown zone, which is the original.
The original map.
If that is what the Saver Committee was trying to accomplish, then that's what we should do.
Again, just clarifying what the 3 optional ordinances indicate. The original is the ordinance that was in draft form last week, which defines the area that would be exempt as the area that's defined by this map that's contained in the ordinance. It does not mirror the downtown zoning district. The second ordinance that I drafted, in fact, does mirror the downtown commercial zoning district and not this boundary that's within the ordinance. The third option is both the commercial valley residential and the downtown commercial.
And the original Saver request was just for this square right here. Is that?
The Saver request was not well understood, and that was part of the confusion in getting to this point. One portion of the letter recommended that these 5 recommendations be applied to both zoning districts, and that was the larger premise of the request. Within the request to reduce the impact fee, it referred to the downtown core, which is this area. So there was some uncertainty as to what that request really meant, and it's been some time since that letter was crafted.
Well, it appears that we have a majority to move forward with accepting this original square, option number 1, and I think we should move forward, I guess, with accepting that because I believe in majority rules. And so we do want a second reading, and I guess what we'll do is at this point, it looks like chair recommendation to have the second reading, and if my fellow commissioners concur that it would be this original square, then we can move forward, and then we will have, after that, we'll take a motion. So, can we have that reading then?
Ordinance number 1811-1012, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, amending sections 17.12.015 and 17.12.040 of the Shelton Municipal Code relating to traffic impact fees.
Do we have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance?
I would move that we adopt ordinance number 1811-1012 as read.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion concerning this? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Noes, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay. Next item of business is item number G. It's under new business. It's talking about the 6th Street Park closure and renovations by our Parks and Recreation Director, Mark Ziegler.
Thank you, Your Honor, Commissioners. A few slides to accompany the discussion tonight. We're talking about 6th Street Park, which is, for anybody's information, is just on the west side of the Civic Center here on Goldsboro Creek. It's actually city right-of-way, 6th Street right-of-way that runs into Goldsboro Creek. The Parks Department has been receiving complaints and information for at least a year now regarding 6th Street Park and some of the activities down there by mostly youth, but members of the community. We've seen quite a bit of activity leading up to as many as 30 people at a time down there, and sometimes that activity has led to negative consequences within the park, often affecting the neighbors that live directly on each side of the park and up 6th Street. Some of that activity includes drinking, vandalism, not only of the park property, but also neighbors' property, fences, shrubbery, brushes, trees, stuff like that. At times, public urination, things like that are taking place down there. The Parks Department has reacted in several ways to try to limit some of this activity. One of the measures that was taken earlier this year was the approval of new park regulations. We have removed picnic tables from the park that have been damaged and vandalized. We have removed barbecue pits that were being used just to burn some of the debris and shrubbery and things like that might have been removed, pulled out of the ground, broken off trees, things like that. We've removed couches, chairs, things like that have been taken into the park as well. So we've really tried to work within our parks maintenance staff as well as the police department to help monitor the park and manage some of the activities down there. On September 27th, we held a public meeting, invited neighbors from around the park area, as well as some of the users of the park. We put up a flyer at the park announcing the meeting, as well as some public outreach by the advisory committee. We had some residents that live adjacent to the park, as well as the Parks Advisory Committee members show up to discuss some of the issues and some solutions to helping maintain the facility as a public park. Essentially, what came out of that meeting is a recommendation tonight to do a temporary closure of 6th Street Park and put some effort into renovating that facility. I'll show you a few pictures of kind of before and after. You'll see up in the top left-hand corner are pictures from around 2007, and the bottom right-hand corner is just last month in September of this year. So with the activity that we're getting down there and the numbers that are congregating down there, it's really essentially wearing out the park. We have a lot of foot traffic, not to mention, some of the activity and vandalism itself. This is a picture down on the creek looking east. Essentially the same view. You can see the two benches, but the shrubbery, grass being essentially trampled into dirt. Some of the changes there. Obviously, it's a little different time of year, I believe, but essentially it's the same view. As the text shows up above, the project was to build the park was an effort to improve salmon habitat, some stream cleanup in Goldsboro, as well as Shelton Creeks, providing some signage in those creeks for interpretive applications. Another view from 6th Street looking into the park to the south. You'll see there was a border with some turf and some grass behind it. That was either removed by visitors or they rotted, and we had to remove them themselves because they're being used for other purposes. Where there once was some grass, there isn't anymore. The picnic tables were in the picnic shelter, as you see, and not there anymore. And at the top are some of the partners that were included in the project originally when this was constructed in 87 and 88. Another view from the creek side looking up at the picnic shelter, and you can see the path being worn a little more up to the shelter down to the creek area, and the loss of foliage in those areas. Now when I talk about a temporary closure, we have a proposed timeline within the briefing. This proposal would be to erect a temporary fence across the front of it out on 6th Street, signage listing the park as closed, and then working with the Parks Department as well as community partners, reaching out to the community to help put forth some renovation efforts down there, replant some grass, replant some of the native vegetation that was in there. Could use some enhancement, reestablishing some of the traffic patterns, some new gravel, new paths, things like that. Re-identifying whether there's any parking even needed down there as a neighborhood park. It's probably suitable that there isn't a whole lot of parking down there. It's a very small park as it is, so reestablishing some borders, some barriers for that. Throughout that timeline, this obviously takes some time to let it grow in, keep the public out of there, let the grass grow in, things like that. We're obviously late in the year, so we'd be looking at that this late fall, winter, getting a head start on things, and then the spring, jumping back in, doing some more renovation projects, letting the facility grow in, and with any luck, looking at a June tentative date to open the facility back up. At that time, with the community effort, hopefully we have more people using the facility and a positive experience, as well as some of the activities and some of the kind of the hangout that it is now may be directed someplace else in that meantime while it's closed.
I would like to be the first to speak upon this one. Usually everyone else speaks, but this one, it may affect what the other commissioners think about this, because I was at that public meeting. And I'm a big fan of parks. I'm a huge fan of Mark Ziegler's. He's done everything he possibly could to save that park. I was there, and the two neighbors that live directly on the borders of that park, what they have gone through is literally World War III. The stories were unbelievable on the abuse that these people have taken from the gangs that hang out there. And I spoke and I said, that we need to revisit this issue at the meeting, not as a mayor, but as somebody that lives one block from this park. This is an extreme case. And in reading through this a couple of times, the unfortunate thing is I don't see anything in this that is going to guarantee or even encourage a change that's going to happen next spring. I think it's all going to happen again unless something else changes. And so, unfortunately, I am greatly in support of putting up that fence and putting no trespassing on that area. And if anybody goes into it, then they've broken the law, and the police should give them tickets, fine them, put them in jail, whatever. But until that area can be reclaimed for people to use that as a park, to me, I cannot see planting grass, fixing sprinkler systems, adding benches, because it is not safe to go down there. And that's my statement about this. So I'm fully in support of temporary, use the word temporary is fine. Close that park down, put a chain link fence against it, and let those neighbors have some sanity, because it is the story, and you heard the stories, Mark.
Absolutely.
You heard the stories, and what you said tonight was a watered-down version of what we heard. We could not tell the kind of stories that these people are going through, and anybody wants to save that park and right now go in there and just plant grass and think it's all going to be beautiful, then please move next to it and live by it, because if any of us lived next to that, what I heard, and I believe both neighbors on both sides, they told true stories, that park, unfortunately, at this time, literally needs to be off limits. And I'm just saying it as straight as I can. Temporary is a good word, but as far as planting new grass and going in there and spending money and trying to rehabilitate, unless we have figured out how we're going to stop what has taken place down there, I think we would be spending good money after bad at this point. And I would ask anybody who's got a plan, whatever the plan is, but if you just make it all beautiful again, take the signs down, I think I don't see a change in that activity on anything that we're doing here. So sometimes, that's my opinion on that. So, and the other two commissioners, if you're aware of what goes on down there or want to speak about this, I can't vote and support this as a whole on putting new sprinklers in down there. We need to figure the problem out and figure out what we can do, but it's dangerous down there.
Unfortunately, part of the solution is making it a better place to be. We've had really good luck in a couple of our parks by encouraging positive use as opposed to negative use, and that might sound like a pie in the sky attitude, but I've seen it work. But in order to do that, you have to have a place where people want to go to have positive use. And that was true of that park at one time. I mean, I remember going down there when this used to be a grocery store. I'd go down there for lunch. It's been a number of years ago, certainly. But the unfortunate things, and I agree, they're terrible things that go on down there, that's not the park's fault. And so closing it off and refurbishing it gives it a chance to be the kind of park that it was once. And hopefully, if enough folks go down there and use it in a positive way, that's going to hopefully keep the negative use away. If it doesn't, then perhaps we need to revisit at that time. But I think the people who enjoy parks in this community need to have a chance to save this one. Certainly no guarantees that it's going to work, but at least give it a chance.
I too live within a block of two downtown parks, and if all it takes is a couple of complaints to close the park down, then why hasn't Brewer Park been closed down? There's many more police reports, assaults, arrests, vandalism, you name it down there, and it's been going on for 4 or 5 years that I've been near it. And I agree that I am not in favor of closing a park and trying to eliminate the problem by that, because it only moves somewhere else. You're not going to change this behavior unless you give options. And I think that the park is for the people, not just the neighborhood, and there are people who use that park. And I think to rehab it is the only way to save it. Otherwise, Mayor's right that it shouldn't be used at all. I think that some education and some community support for it would go a long way. And I would be in favor of the rehab. A temporary closure, I get nervous when you say in here the permanent closure is an option. I don't like to see that. I don't think that's what the taxpayers voted for when they gave the levy for the Parks and Recreation Department. So I would not be in favor of just closing it. I think it needs rehabbed and a strong effort made to make it part of the community. I feel for the neighbors. I've been through the same issues. It's horrible, but there's no solution to closing the park.
Is there anybody, a public comment period, yes, that would like to speak to this issue? So, looks like we have two people. Tracy, you want to speak first? You can.
Okay, Tracy Moore, 611 West Birch Street in Shelton. First of all, I will say I feel so bad for the neighbors who are putting up with this. It is a terrible thing, and without knowing all the details, I can certainly commiserate. I've certainly been here myself a number of times complaining about issues in my neighborhood. I feel very strongly that the voters have really put their money where their hearts are in supporting parks. And I don't like the option at all of taking a park away. I think we should be working really hard to get new parks, which there are a number of citizens who are currently working toward. Building and reclaiming a new area for a park up by the retention pond at the end of 7th Street. As far as all the social problems, it's huge problems, but I have to say I have to dodge poo on my way into work every morning on the sidewalks. And so it's a larger thing, and closing one park is not going to solve it. I really would be hesitant to close a park without a plan and without a set date or a set target date for reopening. I feel like the citizens of Shelton will support the park. They will visit the park. There's an Occupy movement, if you haven't heard, and that's one of the goals, I believe, it's stated goals of that movement, or at least an idea, is that we need to reoccupy our public spaces because they belong to the citizens. They are ours. We pay for them with our tax dollars, and they are valued. One thing that Dave said at the beginning of his program earlier, I didn't have a pen, so I couldn't write it down, but he said something that Shelton is a place like no other, and I would just like to say that Shelton is a unique and special place, and our parks are part of what cannot be claimed by any other area. They're all unique and special to us and part of our identity. Also, I would like to say that this park is, as far as I know, the only access to Goldsboro Creek for the public, and as such, it can be important for generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is that Tristan Starr.
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, I'm Tristan Starr, 1519 Olympic Highway South, Shelton. Our city is the entryway to what Coastal Living magazine states as one of the most beautiful, scenic drives in America, the Olympic Peninsula. So, bingo, downtown Shelton is magazine photo op ready. Not only do journalists look for well-groomed architecture, but beautiful outdoor space as well. Our parks are an exceptional social and economic asset to our city. It's believable to assess that the downtown 6th Street Park is a high-end parcel of real estate. It is located just south of Coda Street West, where at one end is a growing arts antique district, then in the middle is our open and welcoming Civic Center. Then to the west, many historic, well-preserved homes expand along Coda Street to the city entrance. The minute walk from the Civic Center to 6th Street Park at Water's Edge is perfect for a portable lunch under a tranquil pergola, listening to running water and the song of birds. Truly a midday rejuvenation. Now, this is from my heart. I believe it is the only public, accessible access to the water's edge for those with special needs, for people with disabilities. Although many of our citizens have invested in painting and promoting civic pride, the news tells us that a significant number of our property owners are struggling. We have a high % rate of unemployment among our youth, with almost no resources for their social activity. We have homelessness. These social problems are going on in every Shelton neighborhood, including mine. We must not let our frustrations distort our view and value of our fellow citizens. We can shape reality by changing our own perceptions and work to enhance our own attitudes. We can choose to celebrate and preserve our cultural assets. We can work together to find solutions and move forward with a grateful, appreciative view of how fortunate we are to have former leaders who laid the foundation and gave us the beautiful city that we have today. Actually, I think that this is pretty good. History may look back at the decision to close the park and give it away as a real political slip-up and misuse of public assets. I really believe it's a prime piece of real estate. Let's not let the fallen leaves and cloudy days influence a rush to judgment on this matter. Today and in the future, the 6th Street Park is a real gem to the downtown business incubator and an aesthetic asset to our Shelton Civic Center community. Let's look forward to enjoying this little park with its significant history. It's truly a charming vista along the water's edge. It's just picture perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. I do know that the property owners that live right next to that park are here. Did you want to say anything about that? Yeah, could you please come? You need to sign your name and address in right here, if you could, please. And then right there, if you could. I think it's just name and address. I don't know. We got to have your phone number. All right. We can legally go 2 full hours on these meetings without calling it a mistrial, so. Or whatever.
I'm Jackie Loud, and we border the park on the west side. I support us closing the park temporarily for all the reasons stated, and as the mayor has said, many, many more that I don't feel appropriate to bring up at this meeting. But I would like to further suggest that the park not be reopened until a plan is in existence to protect that landscape, the vegetation, to protect the creek, and to protect the serenity of that park. It is a tiny, tiny little park, not conducive to recreation, but only for the beauty or its serenity. And to reopen that park without any plan to protect it from what's happened to it over the last couple of years, I think would be a real mistake and of our resources here.
Thank you very much.
I'm Glenn Lout. I have a dream that it would be a beautiful park, and it could be. The problem is it's so difficult to enforce any rules or regulations there. The police can come down this road, and as soon as something goes on, all activity that's illegal is taken care of before they ever get there. And so it's very frustrating to try to report something that just never has even an opportunity to see the light of day. And it is somewhat hidden. If you come up to it, it goes down, and you cannot see what's going on. I have seen and I know these are drug dealers coming in there with their vehicles and pulling away the front fenders where they've got their drugs hidden and start selling it. And they have ways of having anybody come in there and stop it. The only way you would do it, in my opinion, is if you had to have a drug enforcement, someone undercover working all the time. And I don't think this city has that kind of a budget. This is what you're faced with down there, because it is so conducive to that kind of activity, in my view. I would love to see a beautiful park. It could be gorgeous, and I would like to have it. But right now, I think I would agree with the mayor that I think it's pouring bad money after bad money, and that's my view. But anyway, that's my say.
Thank you very much for your comments. Just for the record, I personally never ever said permanently close the park or shut the park down or never open up a park there. Or I'm seeing in this information in front of me, I do not see a plan that'll change or address the actions of what's going on there right now, exactly what you said. That's my problem with it. And again, this is an extreme situation. We can't even talk about what really goes on down there without embarrassing everybody here and the people on the internet where this is going out. Mark, it's drastic stuff. And I guess I'm making my last plea that I can easily see a temporary closure with the fence going up, but I really think we need a plan. In order to make that a beautiful park and keep it, I think we need a plan. And so that's my statement on this. And if we are to move forward with this, then I guess I would like to see this adjusted so that there's a plan on what we are going to do to address the problems there. That's my concern. So,
Mr. Mayor,
I
I would like to add a short
Okay.
sentence to my statement, because from what they said, which was so influential, if I could just go ahead and add a short thing on.
well, we're all having fun. I'll tell you what,
Thank
here's the
you.
deal. We usually, like try to keep it 3 minute, one person, because we could end up being here for 6 hours.
Right.
But 1 minute, you want to rebuttal. Why don't
Well,
you
yes, because
come and
I'm-
speak, come and speak for
I'm
1
planning on
minute.
coming back to the
Yeah.
commission over a similar
Okay,
issue.
okay.
I just spoke with one of our wonderful first responders officers regarding the situation in my own neighborhood, which is near the Red Apple and my cute little house. And he informed me that 50% of Shelton is on drugs. This was his statement to me as I'm trying to get graffiti painted over and everything else. What has been going on in my community would be actually very shocking to the reality of our city, but it's been going on for many, many years. And I think that what we need is we need adults to come forward. We need more male role models, more mentors. We have nothing for our youth. So I think that we really need to relook at the situation because we're all going through it in our neighborhood, and it would be terrible to just start tearing down vintage houses and closing it up, because according to what this officer, which I don't want to mention his name without his permission, said to me is that 50% of Shelton has severe social problems, and he would guesstimate they're on drugs. So are we going to tear down and close up 50% of the city? I hope not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments by my fellow, yes, another,
May I make a comment?
yeah, come in and sign your name in, please. A name and an address right here on this little white, I have a pen you can borrow right there. Three minutes, please. Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners, my name is Marilyn Vogler. I live at 420 East Poplar. I am a member of the Citizens Advisory Committee to Park Rec. And so I heard the stories that, yes, were deeply troubling about the kinds of things going on in the park. Other things we heard were that much of the problem, part of the problem, can be attributed to people gathering at the main transit center. Part of what we talked about as remediation is that those major bus stops will be moving when the new transit center opens, which will help alleviate some of the people traffic. One of the other things we talked about was the importance of interrupting the behavior, which is the reason for a temporary closure, but also the importance of some immediate, apparent effort to renovate the park. That a temporary closure, if nothing else happens, simply looks like it's abandoned. I appreciate the comments in support of Shelton Parks. That could be a gem in the middle of the city. It's going to take effort on the part of Park Rec to renovate the park. It's going to take commitment on the part of the city public works to at least mow the access to it. Because if you walk down 6th Street, there is this wild tangle of blackberry and weeds behind the apartment buildings. So the property from Coda Street looks abandoned. It's not a property to draw people in. But if the city comes together and works on this, it really is a beautiful park. I would simply ask that you consider the earlier item that you approved, which is an effort to increase business in downtown Shelton. What would be the impact on a potential businessman, businesswoman, looking around Shelton and finding an abandoned park with a chain link fence? Please put your optimism about the potential for growth that you showed in that earlier amendment, earlier passage, into allowing time for the park to be renovated, interruption of the behavior, and reopened to the public. Thank you.
All right. I think we've spoken enough probably about this issue. We're not voting on this tonight. It's moving forward to the consent agenda, I guess. So, I mean, I don't know what we can do at this point unless we just if Mark wants to revise his thing with a plan or something. I mean, I'm not really excited about chain link fences, folks.
I guess a question, point of clarification. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned a plan coming forward. I guess I'd like to know what
part of the plan. I was excited what you said, that the main transit center will be relocated. That's the kind of information that helps make that park work. Okay, that could help, but in breaking the habits, you mentioned another, breaking habits. So if it's closed for 3 or 4 months, part of my concern is just the drug activity and the abuse to the neighborhood that they're getting because of it. The other part of it is the fact the city spending money, whether it's through the parks, Metropolitan Parks District or not, spending money redoing all this stuff to have it do what has just happened. I'm concerned about that. But I've briefed my concerns just as my fellow commissioners have. The public's had ample opportunity to speak, and so the answer on what's going to change that. I don't know that there is an answer. There are little answers. There's little things like moving a location away from there or whatever, but I don't see anything in this that's definitely going to change the behavioral pattern, but maybe our city administrator has a point of interest for us at this time.
I think that your options, you can take it like it is, or you can make changes to it. I think that's going to depend on what 2 of the 3 of you say, or 3 of the 3 of you say. So I think what staff's looking for is whether we keep it like it is or whether we make changes. So that's your call as a city commission.
Well, based upon this report, I can support the fact that we need to temporarily close it until we figure out what we're going to do. I don't just see putting money back in and revitalizing it and bringing it all back to just take the fence down and think that anything's going to change. I don't see that. So that's my opinion at this state. We can move forward. Commissioner Pennell, Commissioner Olson, you can jump in here. If you feel comfortable in approving this, then we can move this forward, because I'm just speaking as one person here. So if you're comfortable with putting the sprinkler systems and all these improvements back in there without what I'm seeing as a real plan on what's going to stop that behavioral thing, that's our issue here. So
I like the plan that you have, Mark. I think I would vote to proceed with it. I think that's the only option available right now, is to rehab the park. Even if it is, as the mayor stated, possibly throwing money away, there are no other options. I think the last option should be closing it, not the first option, as far as on a permanent level. So I support your plan to move ahead with what you have.
Okay.
The mayor said we need a plan. Well, we have a plan. And we have the only plan that a Parks Department can do. I mean, the social aspect of it is another matter entirely. Again, the state that the park is in now is not the park's fault, and I think the park deserves a chance to be rejuvenated, and I guess I'm optimistic enough to think that positive step in that direction is enough to make at least a small change, and small changes sometimes turn into big changes.
The one issue I didn't address in here is how much it might cost, but I honestly think we're not talking about a great expense here. We have an irrigation system in place. It's a small irrigation system.
You have your own budget.
Yeah, and we have a crew.
Okay.
It's a bit of topsoil, seed, some native plants that frankly could be
All right.
harvested.
I have a statement. I think we have overly exhausted all of our options here tonight, and we've come up with a plan, and that's to move this forward, as you've written here, and place this on the consent agenda for October 22nd, 2012. There we go. That's how we do it. Very good. Next is the Angleside Booster Pump Design, and this will be a briefing presented to us by Mike Michael.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you. This project's been a long time coming, actually, for a relatively easy project. Back in 2010, we completed the update to our water comprehensive plan, and one of the projects that was identified was some sort of rehabilitation for the Angleside zone to make better use of the volume in the tank up there. And the best option that was identified there was actually installing a booster pump station to make use of that volume of water in the system there. In late 2010 and 2011, we went through an RFQ process and ended up hiring Brown and Caldwell to start the process of designing that project, initially intending potentially to build it this year. Through various questions that came out, debates among staff, about the best way to manage this, it took us until about this time last year to get to a decision point on what the design was going to look like. And in particular, we originally approved the scope and a two-phase budget around the idea of a custom design built on-site pump station. Through the initial 30% design phase, the option of a factory-built station was brought to our attention, primarily for its potential for cost savings. Final evaluation of that, we felt that the cost savings and expeditious nature of getting the project built, that made a lot of sense. Through the end of last fall and early into this year, Brown and Caldwell finished that 30% design phase, including the project reporting necessary for Department of Health to get approval to move forward with this concept. I believe it was in March we got the approval and started negotiation with Brown and Caldwell for the final budget and scope for phase 2, and we're unsuccessful in getting there. After changing direction on the type of building, staff felt very confident that the cost should be significantly less than the pre-approved budget for phase 2, and we just couldn't get to a meeting of the minds with Brown and Caldwell on that issue. In early June, we mutually agreed to terminate the existing contract with Brown and Caldwell and start looking at options moving forward. Murray Smith and Associates was actually our number 2 consultant in the original RFQ, and looking at contracting laws and what we can do there as well as our own policies. It made a lot of sense and was expedient for us to go to Murray Smith and ask their interest. They definitely were interested, and we've spent the last couple months in amongst project stuff negotiating a scope and budget with them. What you have in front of you this evening is the contract wrapped around that scope and budget we finally were able to get negotiated. Original contract with Brown and Caldwell, we had a phase 2 scope of approximately $200,000. Murray Smith and Associates, we were able to negotiate that same scope plus a little bit of additional services for some construction support for $140,000, round numbers you'll see in here. Approximately $60,000 savings from what Brown and Caldwell was trying to stick to as part of their phase 2 scope. We've reviewed that scope. There are some minor adjustments that need to be made on the fly through there, but generally the scope is what we believed it should be. The cost is very favorable for us, and at this time the staff is recommending that the commission approve this contract with Murray Smith and Associates for phase 2 design efforts on the Ingleside Booster Pump Station, and authorize the mayor to sign it when the consultant returns the contract. And we would ask that this be moved forward to consent agenda for next week.
Very good. Any comments or questions from my fellow commissioners?
Yeah, Mike, was there any negative impact by canceling the other contract financially?
No.
Didn't cost us anything?
No, didn't cost us. We completed the work that was approved. Because of some of the delays making some decisions internally, we did spend a little bit more on phase 1 than we originally anticipated, but it was a legitimate additional cost to BNC for that work, so.
Only question I have.
Well, yes.
In case nobody noticed, we just saved the city, our staff did $60,000. So
good.
that's good. Thanks, guys.
Very good. Thank you very much on that. Well, then it's staff's recommendation to place the Murray Smith and Associates contract on the consent agenda for October 22nd, 2012, authorizing the mayor to sign and return with the return when returned from the contractor. And so I think that's what we'll do at this time. Item number H is administrative report. Mr. Dave O'Leary.
Said enough tonight already, Your Honor.
Sounds good. We have a general public comment. Anybody else want to add 2 cents to the 50 cents we put in before? Seeing no hands going up. Administration final touches.
Actually, I've got a big list, but I'll make it short. So, actually, last week, it was brought to our attention by the auditor's office that the vacation ordinance the commission passed late last year for the alley near Tozier's had a minor typographical error in it, and so couldn't be completed as is. They actually recorded it, but they did require that we do need to do an amendment to correct that. We've talked with our attorney about how to do that. We have a new ordinance amending the legal description ready to bring forward on a briefing next week with the commission. We're also moving forward with the process for the Dayton Airport Road construction. That project went out to advertisement last week, and so between that and our treatment plant, we've got 3 items coming forward over the next several weeks. We'll have the construction contract award sometime after the 30th. And in time with that, we'll have IGA 20, which sets the payment for that work. We also have a time extension amendment for IGA 17, which is the construction cost to the partners for the treatment plant that'll be coming forward. And finally, next week, Dennis McDonald will be bringing forward a briefing for an SRF loan application for the Basin 3 construction, the residual funding needed for that.
Other touches.
Other touches?
That's it.
That's it, very good. Our next meeting is Monday, October 22nd, 2012, at 2 PM. I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.